Chapter 14, Osceola. The Indian boy was 6 or perhaps 7 when the great Tecumseh came to his village on the Tallapoosa River in Alabama. Tecumseh had left his tribespeople by the waters of Tippecanoe. He had traveled south to meet with the Cherokees, the Creeks, the Choctaws, the Chickasaws, and other people of the great Indian Confederation that stretched across the lands the white men called Mississippi, and Georgia, and Alabama, and Carolina. Tecumseh and his men performed feats of strength and daring. The boy, a Creek of the Tallahassee tribe, must have been mightily impressed, but did he understand the seriousness of their mission? Tecumseh had come to persuade the tribes to forget their rivalries. He preached a message of strength and unity. Tecumseh's mother was a Creek. His kinsmen listened politely, but they did not hear. There were 2 factions among them. Some who lived and farmed as the whites did were called White Sticks. Others, who still maintained their Indian ways, were called Red Sticks. The White Sticks wanted to cooperate with the Americans. The Red Sticks wanted to drive them away. When Tecumseh died, there was no leader left who even attempted to hold the Indians together. Tecumseh was right. They would lose their only chance to change American history. The white men would use them. In the war that was coming, the War of 1812, the White Sticks would fight with the Americans against the Red Sticks and the British. It would be an Indian Civil War. It all came to a climax in March 1814, when General Andrew Jackson and the White Sticks fought a battle at the Horseshoe Bend of Tallapoosa River. They beat the Red Sticks. Although many didn't understand it at the time, it was a disaster for both groups of Indians. Never again were the Creeks powerful. Soon after the battle at Horseshoe Bend, the Americans thanked their White Stick allies by forcing them to sign a treaty handing over most of their land. The Red Sticks had worse problems. They now had no land at all. They hid in the woods. The Creek boy, his mother, and what was left of the Tallahassee tribe headed south. They crossed the border into Spanish Florida. The Indians who lived in Florida were called Seminoles. They were a mixture. Many had been Creek. A few were of the old, mostly extinct Florida tribes. Some were wanderers and outcasts, and some were blacks who had been slaves. The word Seminole was said to have come from an Indian word meaning runaway, although some said it was a mispronunciation of a Spanish word meaning wild ones. The Creek boy and his tribe's people were welcomed by the Seminoles. They settled in fertile North Florida. In that opulent land, they could feast on fish cakes, cornbread, bear ribs, alligator steak, turkey legs, and delicate rattlesnake meat. The boy grew to love his new home. He and his people kept many of their Creek ways. The women farmed, the men hunted. Because the climate was warm, their houses were simple roofed platforms on stilts. They kept them off the moist ground. Their houses were built around a central square that was used for ceremonies and tribal dances. The boy was of average height, with small hands and feet, and a sensitive, almost pretty face. It was when he played the Indian ball game the French called lacrosse that his energy and determination became apparent. He liked to win, and he usually did. When he was 15, he was old enough to take part in the sacred ceremonies that introduced him to manhood. He fasted and prayed and drank of the bitter black juice that marked the coming of his age. Now he received his adult name. He was Osceola. The white men who heard it said Osceola. Like Tecumseh, he stood out among the others. He seemed braver and more truthful, but he carried with him the anger at White Stick Creeks and at white men. You will hear more about Osceola. Take me out to the ball game. George Catlin was a lawyer and artist, and he painted the portrait of Osceola in his chapter, and a student of Indian life. In this painting, Catlin shows Sioux women playing a ball game. His words here describe Choctaw men playing a similar game. Both games were like lacrosse. Each party had their goal made with 2 upright posts about 25 feet high and 6 feet apart, set firm in the ground with a pole across the top. These goals were about 40 or 50 rods apart, and at a point just halfway between was another small stake driven down where the ball was to be thrown up at the firing of a gun, to be struggled for by the players, who were some 600 or 700 in numbers. And they were mutually endeavoring to catch the ball in their sticks and throw it home and between their respective stakes. Every mode is used to oppose the progress of the foremost, who is likely to get the ball, and these obstructions often meet desperate individual resistance, which terminates in a violent scuffle, and sometimes in fisticuffs. For each time that the ball was passed between the stakes of either party, one was counted for their game, and so on until the successful party arrived to 100, which was the limit of the game and accomplished at an hour's sun.